Wabarakatuh. Thank you for joining us this evening. Today's talk is brought to you by Premium Foundation on the topic of the fiqh of zakat. This is an incredibly important topic. It is one of the pillars of our deen, and we have a very distinguished teacher with us today who will be walking us through this topic. We have with us today Ustadh Bilal Rashid. He is currently a teacher. He's teaching and focusing on the Islamic science of fiqh, on the area of fiqh. He has also been studying the Islamic sciences for a number of years with multiple scholars in the UK and internationally. So, inshallah, we will benefit tremendously today from him and from his material and from his information and knowledge that he will impart to us. The last thing to say before I hand over to the Ustad is that we will be taking questions, of course, on this topic and on anything that the Ustad touches on or elucidates upon. Please, would you kindly use the chat function to write down, type in all your questions, and we will, inshallah, go through all of the questions that are put forward towards the end of the session. So without further ado, I will hand over to Ustadh Bilal Rashid. Ustadh Bilal, if you would kindly please take it from here, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Zakaath Correctly. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thanks for everyone attending, and I would like to thank Three Memes for organizing this event and having me here. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Inshallah, as Brother Tasif mentioned, we're going to try to we'll try to kind of do a walkthrough, a step-by-step step through of the zakat. It can be complicated, but inshallah, I've put some PowerPoint presentation here together to try to make it easy, and we'll try to take it step by step, inshallah. The focus would be mainly to understand the rulings regarding who is to pay zakah and who is eligible to receive zakah. We won't be focusing too much on the spiritual, or actually we won't be going anywhere near the spiritual aspects of zakah and all that, because in this 1 hour, there's not much time to actually go through everything. So we'll try to stay focused on the rulings of zakah itself. Just briefly, okay. So as the Quran mentioned that zakah is only for the poor and the needy, for those employed to administrate it, for those whose hearts are attracted to the faith, for freeing slaves, and for those in debt for Allah's cause, and for the needy travelers. This is an obligation from Allah, and Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. So the first thing we need to remember that zakah itself, it's an obligation, and as the Quran clearly stipulates this, faridatan min Allah, that it is an obligation from Allah. Allah has actually has stipulated this obligation onto us, and it's been the recipient has been clarified as well. So these 8 categories here, which we'll go into later, inshallah, Allah has made it clear that this is an obligation on your wealth, and is something that should be taken seriously, just the way we take our salah seriously, and anything which is an obligation, which we say a fard in our deen. We don't mock about with it. We don't play tricks with it. When we stand up in salah, we don't look for loopholes. For example, how can I pray my salah quicker and in a way that it's not really fulfilling it, but in a way we're trying to we make sure the salah is fulfilled properly. We don't look for loopholes and anything like that. Similarly, zakah is an obligation at the same level. Someone who denies zakah, he's a kafir. He enters into the realms of disbelief. So it is very serious, and one should take extreme care when the time of zakah comes. It should be treated like any other obligation without trying to look for loopholes. And zakah is an obligation that is specific. And And the reason we say specific is because it's an obligation which has been stipulated on us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and with all the details that are required from the Quran and the Sunnah, we gather that the recipients of zakah have been mentioned, and how much amount of zakah has to be paid. All of that has been laid out. So it is something which is not ambiguous. It's very clear, and it's a very specific form of charity that Allah has made incumbent upon the Muslims. And there are other obligations on our wealth which are not specific. Okay, so for example, the obligation, the financial obligation on your wealth towards your spouse. So husband towards the wife, he has an accountability to provide for her. Likewise, the father, he needs to provide for the children. And likewise, the children need to be providing for the parents. And likewise, the parents need to be providing for the children, and also the children for the parents. So these are financial obligations which are not specific in a sense, because there is no amount specified, like how much should you give to your spouse, how much should you give to your children, and how much should the children give to their parents. So it's kept loose, it's open-ended, but zakah is not like that. Zakah is very specific, and all the details have been outlined. And we hear again on the aspect of it being an obligation. There's the hadith which Ibn Abbas narrated, and the Prophet ﷺ sent Mu'adh to Yemen and said, so invite the people to testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I am Allah's messenger. And if they obey you to do so, then teach them that what Allah has enjoined on them from the 5 prayers in every day and night. And then if they obey you to do so, meaning if they pray the 5-time prayer, then teach them that Allah has made it obligatory for them to pay the zakah from their property, and it is to be taken from the wealthy amongst them and given to the poor. So it's very clear that zakah is an obligation, and it's not something to be played about with. And a few benefits of zakah briefly, as the Quran mentions, that take from your wealth, O Prophet ﷺ, charity to purify, to purify and bless them, and pray for them. Surely your prayer is a source of comfort for them, and Allah is all hearing, all knowing. So from this verse, we see there are 2 benefits of zakah. One is tutahhiruhum. So one is to purify the wealth of the person, and to zakihim. And the second aspect of this is to purify the individual. There is a spiritual refinement when one fulfills the obligation, just the way one fulfills any other obligations that have been stipulated on him. And there are many warnings in the Quran and the Sunnah regarding not giving zakah, as this ayah mentions, and do not let those who greedily withhold Allah's bounties think it is good for them. So here meaning, the zakah you meant to pay, withholding that, don't think it is good for you. In fact, it is bad for them. They will be leashed by their necks on the day of judgment with whatever wealth they used to withhold. And Allah is the sole inheritor of the heavens and the earth, and Allah is all aware of what you do. So this is amongst many of the warnings that have come in the Quran and the Sunnah. We don't have time to go through all of them, but just I thought briefly mention this. So now really we're going to jump into the fiqh of zakah now, inshallah. Zakah is a transfer. So technically, what is zakah? So zakah is a transfer of ownership. So that's the first point to remember. It's transfer of ownership of a portion of wealth which an individual gives, specified by the lawgiver, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to a particular person from the 8 categories that Quran mentions, with its intention. So intention is a must with any act of worship. Without intention, no act of worship is valid. So zakah is obligatory on specific wealth upon. So this is the first thing we're going to look into. Who is zakah obligatory upon? Okay, I'll look at the questions at the end and they're popping up. So what I will be doing is I'm going to try to go through the slides, and at the end, inshallah, we'll take a visit to the Q&A, inshallah. So zakah is obligatory on the free, adult, and sane Muslim. So this is the first condition. Anyone who is mature, is sane, and is a Muslim. What this means then, children are excluded from paying zakah. So how do we define maturity? So as in fiqh, we say, if it's a boy, then his sign of maturity is that as soon as he has a wet dream, or for a girl, it's going to be when she has her first menstruation. This is the sign of maturity, and if the signs don't appear, then by the age of 15, they are considered to be, by default, mature adults. Children, as long as they're not mature, if they have any savings, they don't have to pay zakah. That is actually, zakah is not obligatory on them to pay. If they have any saving accounts, for example, parents nowadays, they open up a saving account for their children, and with the intention that they will keep put small amounts of money into it frequently, with the intention that they don't have the intention of touching that money to use it for themselves, but the sole intention really is that drop by drop we'll put some money into that saving account, and when they become adults, then we will they can use the money. So such money is really the child's money, and they're just taking care of it without the intention of using it. So such money will not be liable for zakah, because it's considered to be the child's money. And on that, if the parents need to spend on the child from that amount of money that they put aside in the saving accounts for the children, it will be permissible to do that, but not to use it on themselves. So though they're putting the savings into the child account, the intention is for the child, and that's absolutely fine. There'll be no zakah on it, but what they can't do is use it for themselves. They can use it still. They can still have access to it and use it on the child for the needs of the child, and that would be absolutely fine to do. So that's the first condition. The second is the adult. He needs to possess the zakatable minimum, which is called the nisab. So the nisab is the term given to the zakatable minimum amount that one needs to possess. And how long does that person need to possess the nisab, which is the zakatable minimum amount? That is a full lunar year. When a full lunar year has passed over it, then that person is now obligated to pay zakah. So number one, he has to be a Muslim adult, and secondly, he has to have the nisab, which is the zakatable minimum, and he has to hold that zakah minimum for a minimum of 1 year. Now, the specific wealth does not need to be possessed for over a year, but only the zakatable minimum. So by the specific wealth here means what is zakat due on? So I'm sure everyone has an idea that you pay zakat on gold, silver, cash, and any savings you have, and any trade commodities, which we'll go into. But the specific wealth that's what we mean here. So so you don't need to own all your savings. You don't need to own your properties and all that, and any cash savings and any savings you have, gold, silver. It's not a requirement to have that in possession for over a period of 1 lunar year. But what we are looking at is the zakatable minimum needs to be possessed for a year. So we're looking at the minimum amount that one needs to possess for the period of 1 lunar year, but not all your savings, okay? So the nisab, so now that nisab may fluctuate throughout the year, but what matters is that it exists in the beginning and at the end of the year. So for example, today, say someone has a habit of doing it on the 1st of Jan every year, to make it simple. So on the 1st of Jan, he will see, does he have the nisab value, the minimum amount that's required? If he has that, then his year has started. Okay, now all the way up to the 31st of December, he will check on 31st of December, do I still have the zakatable minimum, the nisab amount? Yes, I have it. So all that matters is on the 1st of Jan, he has the nisab amount equal to it or more than that. And the second thing that matters is at the end of the year, which is, for example, it won't be 31st of December because the lunar year is shorter. But this is just for the sake of giving an example, because the lunar year is about 10 to 12 days shorter than the solar year. But just for the sake of example, on the 1st of Jan, you had the nisab, and 31st of December, you had the nisab. Okay. Then the fluctuation in between doesn't matter. That saving you had, it might dip down below the nisab level, but we don't look at that. What we look at is it exists in the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. The only time we look at the fluctuation throughout the year is when that nisab is completely destroyed, meaning you no longer have it, because maybe you took something happened in your life and you had to take a big debt out. Now, so again, we're going to look at that later, but then what it means is the debt is now going to take you to minus. What that means is you have basically lost your nisab. So anytime you lose the nisab completely, then we say at that point the year has ended and it ceases the year of the zakah. So that means now you will have to wait until you reach to the nisab level again. Once you reach the nisab level, then your new year will start from there. Okay, but the fluctuation in between, as long as it doesn't go below zero, we say it doesn't matter. Now we come on to the zakatable minimum. So now we understand that zakah is obligated on a mature Muslim and who has the nisab value for over one lunar year. Now, what is the nisab? So nisab generally, as is common in the hadith, is that it's either based on silver or gold. And the reason for that is this was the currency at that time as well in the old times. They used to trade with gold and silver. And in the ahadith, they mention the nisab is based on gold and silver. So there's an option to either calculate your nisab based on gold or silver. So the nisab of silver is, if someone possesses 612.36 grams of silver, then that means that is the minimum nisab level. If someone owns that much silver, then we say he has hit the nisab level, and now from that point his year has started, and he will wait for a year and then he will pay zakah after that 1 year. Or if he has 87.48 grams of gold, which equates, again, I put the figures, these are based on last night, so you can see the figures. So the nisab of gold is about 3,585 pounds. So if someone has that much worth of savings, then we say he's hit the nisab level and he is obligated to pay zakah. Now, which nisab do we use? You can see there's a big difference. The nisab of silver works out to be 362 pounds, and the nisab of gold works out to be 3,585 pounds. And there's a big disparity between the two. Traditionally, the scholars used to say we go with the lowest nisab because that's in the favor of the poor people. However, today there's an argument that one thing is, in the old days, in those times, the difference between gold and silver wasn't great. It wasn't too much like we're seeing it today in this day and age. So it didn't really matter much because there wasn't such a big difference between the two of them when you calculated the nisab. However, now there's a big disparity, and someone who has 350 pounds, for example, he's not well off. He is struggling. He is going to be tight. So it doesn't really make sense to base the nisab on silver anymore. So there's a there is an argument out there that nowadays majority are kind of going with the nisab of gold. So again, but both are sound because the nisab has come in the sunnah, and so one is allowed to use either of nisab, but recommended really nowadays, if someone just wants to pay zakah and looking at the benefit of the poor people, and if you can, then you go with the nisab of silver. But if someone is really struggling himself, and nowadays, to be honest, £350 is nothing. Someone with that much saving really would be struggling in nowadays. So it's recommended to go with the nisab of gold. So if someone has the nisab of gold, which is £3,500, then that person will pay zakah. So now we understand what the zakatable minimum is. So if one possesses the nisab, so this amount that we're looking at based on gold or silver. So if it's gold, then if someone possesses £3,500 on, let's say on the 1st of Jan, and then an entire year passes on it, a lunar year passes on it, and he checks on 31st of December, and he still has that much amount still of savings, then we say he's possessed the nisab for an entire year, and now zakah is due on that person for everything he has, for all savings he has. Now we're gonna look into what does a person pay zakah on. Okay, what are the commodities? What kind of saving does a person pay zakah on? In the calculation of the nisab. So when we say, does someone have a nisab? Now we look at a combination. We don't just look at how much gold a person has. This is only based on value. So we're looking at, do you have a value of this much gold, or do you have value of this much silver? If you have that, then that's it, you pay zakah. So that could be made up with a combination of you having cash savings. For example, you might have £2,000 in cash, and you might have some gold and some silver. Okay, so what we say is, okay, you've got £2,000 cash. Okay, that's below the nisab. But if you have gold and silver, we look at the value of the gold and silver, and if they themselves are £2,000 each, so that means £2,000 of cash you got £2,000 worth of gold, and you got £2,000 worth of silver. That's £6,000. So the combination of that, the summation of that, we say now that collectively is above the nisab level, then you will pay zakah. You will be obligated to pay zakah. So that's one thing to remember when calculating your nisab. You have to kind of look at everything you have, and you base it on the collection of the savings and different saving items you have. Also, on which wealth, so which is leading on to the next question we're discussing now. So on which wealth does one pay zakah? And again, these are the things you consider when you calculating your nisab as well, to start the beginning and the end of the year. So zakah is due in various proportions on any gold you have, any silver, any cash, any trade goods. And you can see I've mentioned it's 2.5% you pay zakah on them. So all the four things in the beginning, so any gold, silver, cash, and trade goods you have, you will pay 2.5% zakah on it. And the other things such as cattle you own, like camels, cows, sheep, and goats, and any produce of the land you have, like fruits, vegetables, or any treasure or metals you find, they'll be out of the scope of this session because there's some maths involved in trying to depending on how the number of cattle you have, then it'll be this much, and then X number more will be this much. And generally nowadays people are not really into farming and all that. If someone is into it, then we can always look at a separate session to go through the maths of that. But it is a bit of it does take time to go through it. So for the time we have today, we won't be going into looking into any of the produce of the land, or if you got any cattle or that, we won't be looking at the calculations for that. And there is no zakah on items of personal use. So that's the principle. So anything which is of personal use, you don't pay zakah on that. So unless it's for trading purposes. So if you own a house, you don't pay zakah on it. If you have many houses, you don't pay zakah on any of them, as long as they're not meant for trading purposes. So if you have a spare house and it's not even on rent, then we say you don't pay any zakah on that. You could own 10 houses, but as long as there's no trade happening, we say you don't pay any zakah on that. Land not for selling purposes, again, you can own many lands, but the intention is not to trade. Again, we're going to look into that, but again, generally, any land you own, doesn't matter how many lands you own, as long as your intention is not to sell, or you didn't buy with the intention of selling, then we say there's no zakah on that. I've got a separate slide on that, we'll look into it. Any clothing you have, any household furniture, any animals you have, just for, like you might hold, you might have a dog or something, and cats and anything like that, or you might have a horse, personal cars and weapons of use, anything which is personal usage, you don't pay zakah on that. There is a question on, generally people ask, do I have to pay zakah on gold and silver, which is for personal use, like jewelry. And in the Hanafi school, again, one thing I forgot to mention, we are generally looking at the Hanafi school of thought here. I will see if I can mention I might mention a few differences here and there, but we are focusing on the Hanafi school of thought here. In the Hanafi school of thought, there is zakah on any jewelry which is for personal use as well. So we don't distinguish between jewelry or gold, which is kind of bought for wearing purposes, or if you're just buying gold blocks or something like that. There is no distinction. So any gold you possess, whether it's in the form of jewelry, and maybe someone got married and you got a lot of gold at that time, you got a lot of jewelry at that time, we say you'll have to pay zakah on that. It's not accepted. There's no exemption to it. In the other schools, there is actually an exemption. If it's the jewelry for gold, if it's jewelry for personal use, then it actually is exempted in some of the other schools, but not in the Hanafi school of thought. Okay, now we go into the recipients of zakah. So these are the 8 categories which we mentioned, the ayah we recited in the beginning. So looking at the first one, the faqir. So this is the poor person, and again, this is a person whose circumstances are quite tight. He's always in a deficit, and maybe his deficit is more than it's not more than 50%. So this is a person who probably has a job, he's working, but he doesn't earn enough to meet the basic essential needs of his family. So and his deficit in that sense is kind of less than 50%, but there is a deficit, and he can't make both ends meet. Then the second one that the ayah mentions is miskin. Again, there's a bit of overlap between the miskin and the faqir. Generally, both are poor. And again, miskin is the same, can't make both ends meet. And his deficit is a bit more than the faqir. And possibly this person, miskin, is someone who doesn't have a job, or he's maybe handicapped, disabled, so there's no source of income. And generally the category of miskin are those people who actually are shy of asking. They don't like to ask for money. So if you have to decide between the two, then they say the miskin is more deserving because his condition is more severe, and he's someone who doesn't like asking as well. So he's kind of unknown because he doesn't ask. And then we have the third category, which is the amil. So these are people who, in the old days, when the Islamic Caliphate was there, So the authority, the government, the Khalifa would appoint. They would have a body which would be responsible for collecting zakah. They would collect zakah. So the Khalifa, the authority in place, would actually assign them to go all out, pay zakah, collect the zakah from the people, and then distribute it to the needy people that need it. And this was actually a system well developed in the Khalifa system. So what they would do is, if they weren't able to pay those workers who were carrying out this duty, if they couldn't pay their salaries from the treasury, then they would pay them proportionally to the work. So for example, nowadays, you go and you get paid per hour for doing some job. That's what I mean. They were paid proportionally from the Zakah funds, proportionally as to whatever the rate was in those days. They would be paid per proportionally to the effort they were putting in. So it's not really like you're helping a poor person, but they were just paid for the work they were carrying out accordingly, and that's all it was. So this category doesn't really exist today. So one can kind of safely assume that you don't need to consider the workers who collect zakah and distribute it. And then the fourth category is al-mu'allaf al-qulub. So this is a category of people whose hearts need strengthening. So in this regard, there are disagreements on this, like does this category exist today or not? Briefly, I'll mention it. So there are two categories in this. So looking at the seerah, they say there are two categories in this: those who came to Islam through reconciliation of their hearts. Okay, so for example, the example they give in this is Safwan bin Umayyah. So when the conquest of Mecca happened, then the Prophet ﷺ gave him about 4 months to think about his situation. At the conquest, everyone was forgiven. There was no revenge taken. So at that point, he had 4 months to think about his situation, and eventually later he accepted Islam. But he mentions that the Prophet ﷺ used to give him money, yeah, and he said the Prophet ﷺ was the most hated person to him before Islam, and then he says he gave me and he gave me and he gave me until, meaning he used to give him sadaqah, and he gave me and he gave me until he became the most beloved person to me. So from the seerah, they see, there's kind of evidence that, people were helped to strengthen their iman through the zakah funds. And the other thing they say from the seerah we see is the Prophet ﷺ also paid the disbelievers to avoid harm. Okay, so there was a couple of people that he would give, again from the sadaqah, he would give them, and they weren't Muslims, and they, when he used to give them, they used to praise Islam, and they used to say that Islam is a great religion. And when they weren't given anything, then they would just go on and critique and criticism and all that, and make life difficult. So to prevent the harm coming from the non-Muslims, we see evidence in the Sunnah that they were also given from sadaqah. So there is evidence to suggest that this happened. However, again, there are disagreements that some say the sadaqah that was given to them was not from the zakat funds, and there are others who are saying that no, it was from the zakat funds. So with all these disagreements and difference of opinions, the conclusion really of all that disagreement is that the preferred view is that in nowadays, the Hanafis say basically that this category doesn't exist anymore. So they used to say that Imam Abu Hanifa is known to have said that Islam has been given victory, and Islam is well spread, is well established, and there is no threat from anyone anymore, and we can defend ourselves. So this category has been abrogated in a sense, and there is no more need for this. It was in the early days of Islam, and hence there is no more need to carry on with this. But the preferred view really is, amongst all the school, is that this category is still existent in the sense this category may not exist all the time, but when the need arises, then you may give to such people. And in nowadays, and in nowadays, what this does mean is, just like in the old days, some people were given some disbelievers were given to prevent from harming the Muslims, and some new Muslims were given some sadaqah so that their hearts are firmed, and then until they become strong, and then they don't need it anymore, and they're firm in their deen as well. So the same, they say the preferred view is that you may give it to new Muslims that who just entered Islam, and if they need a bit of strengthening, then you may give it to them, just so that their hearts are firmed, and that it's possible that when they revert to Islam, and there might be backlash from their relatives who are not Muslims, and there is a lot of and they may be struggling just in relations with in terms of relations with their relatives, their parents, and all that. It could be difficult times, and then when there are incentives like financial incentives, they have less worries, and they can focus on their deen. So you may give it to new Muslims until you feel like they're doing okay. So that is a preferred view nowadays, that you may give it to them. And that is all with the objective that you're going to strengthen their iman because they're new, and also the result could be that they could also influence their non-Muslim friends, and they may come to Islam as well. Then the fifth category is the mukatib. So mukatib is a slave who has made an agreement with his master to free himself. So he's kind of made a contract with his master that if I give you this much over time, then the master agrees to eventually free him when he pays the entire amount. Again, not applicable today. We don't have, we still have slavery in parts of the world, but really something that we don't really encounter. And the gharim. So the debtor is the one on whom a debt is incumbent. So this is someone who's in debt. Can we pay zakah to get rid of his debt? So for the Hanafi school of thought, it is only permissible to relieve someone's debt if he is a recipient of zakah, meaning if he's a faqir or a miskin. If he's a poor person, he's needy, and he has a debt. So what that means is, if faqir or a miskin, then what we're saying is that he doesn't have the nisab. He doesn't hold the minimum zakatable amount. And that automatically puts you into the faqir and the miskin category. So for the Hanafis, someone in debt, yes, you may pay zakah to relieve them of the debt, as long as they are someone who are eligible to receive zakah, meaning they don't have the nisab, and that means they will either fall into the faqir or the miskin, or they might not fall into them, but they're just short of the nisab, just about there, slightly short, and then someone like that, yes, you can help them to relieve them of the debt. Now, having said that, there are obviously conditions. What kind of debt is this? Number one, it shouldn't be that they just wanted a nice, they already have a house and they just wanted to buy another house, which is a second home basically, but they don't need it. So it's not for, again, it's a debt which is they've encountered for essentials, something, it's for their basic needs, and they took a debt for that. yes, then you can help them. But someone, who's already got, has got all the essentials and is just, spending money left, right, and center, taking loans from banks and, all that. And, he's wasting, he's careless. So someone like that, they say, no. The condition is that, someone who's took a debt, there's a genuine need for that. It might be that he couldn't he couldn't meet the needs of his family. He took a debt, okay, because he couldn't make both ends meet. Again, this is a fakir or a miskin who's always in a deficit. So he took a debt so he can make things easy for himself, okay? And maybe, his deficit was, let's say his deficit was for the year, so let's say it was 5K, but he took a loan of 20K. Someone loaned him 20K. That's fine, absolutely, because the loan he took was, okay, for the 5K that he needs only 5K for the year, but the extra 15K, he needs to be comfortable. So he took a bigger loan. So that's absolutely fine. And one can pay zakah to relieve him of that debt as well. And now there is no really limits on how much, you should help him with in relieving him from the debts. Okay. Yeah, and so many reasons are like, so number one is he has to be someone who's below the nisab. Then you can help him with paying off his debts. And some reasons are kind of valid reasons for taking a debt. For example, like we mentioned, the essential needs of one's family. So one has to get married. Is he fulfilling the sunnah, and at one point everyone has to get married. So so he took a loan to help him to get married. Again, it's a valid reason, and you can help such a person. Medical bills, someone had to undergo a surgery or operation, or his medicine is just quite pricey, and because of that he gets into debt. Absolutely valid reasons for to help someone in that situation. And someone even, he's buying his primary residence. He had to buy a house for his family and for himself, which is a primary residence, and he took a debt for that. Again, they say is absolutely fine to help such a person to rid him of the debts. Or someone has been afflicted by a natural disaster like an earthquake or something. So these are kind of the reasons they mention, in the gharim. So someone who's in debt. Again, it's not just anyone, and there are kind of conditions, and one needs to, as long as it's within this parameter of, why the person has took a debt, then it's absolutely fine to relieve him of that. And there's another reason to relieve the person of that is because from the sunnah, there are many, many warnings that someone who actually dies and there's a debt upon him, he may not enter the paradise until the debt is relieved, and many, many more kind of, severe warnings and all that against someone who's in debt. Doesn't mean he won't enter Jannah, but maybe look up, if you look that up, you'll see, that there are many, many warnings against someone who's in debt. So again, if you can relieve someone who's in debt, and is kind of, it's a valid reason why that person kind of got into debt, within reason, then we should try to help people who are in debt by paying them zakah money. And then we have fi sabilillah. So the people in the path of Allah is someone who is prevented by poverty from struggling in the cause of Allah. So again, this is another one where there are many disagreements. The strictest view, and which is the four imams of the four schools, they said it literally means those who are fighting in the path of Allah, meaning on the holy war, jihad. So if they're on a holy war in the battle, then this is what this means, fi sabilillah. So so now zakah can be used for the soldiers. So you could actually pay the soldiers who are actually partaking in the battlefield, and you can spend on zakah, spend on them from the zakah money to aid the holy war. And this is what they say. The four imams said that this is what this means. This is what this fi sabilillah means in this verse. It doesn't mean anything else. Then, other than them, later and in these times, there is a minority opinion, and which says fi sabilillah means anything which is a good cause, anything good in the path of Allah. Now, if you go with that, then it opens up, the possibility of spending the money of zakah on many other things. For example, someone can argue that Islamic institutions, well, they're all fighting for the sake of Allah, and they maybe you can spend it on that. But then there comes a point. Then you say, where does it stop then? Because then one may say, well, we can spend it on the masajid then, because the masajid are also there fighting for the cause of Allah. They're here in the West, for example, building symbols of Islam, defending Islam, and training people, educating people, and all that. All is this in the path of Allah. It's the struggle of Allah in the path of Allah. So it gets very tricky when you kind of just open it up like anything in the path of Allah. So the safest really is to keep it to what the four imams said, that it's strictly for those people partaking in the battlefield for the holy war, because also if you take the loose understanding of this, that anything in the path of Allah which is good, it's for the benefit of the people, benefit of the Muslims, then technically all the categories that have mentioned, faqir, miskin, amil, mu'allaf al-qulub, slaves, and the last ibn sabil, they're all covered in that. So it doesn't really make sense that Allah mentions in the Quran, He mentions all the the categories one by one, and then He puts one there. Well, you can spend it on anything good. It just doesn't make sense. Okay, so though there are scholars who today say that you can actually spend it on good causes, but it doesn't really make sense. So the safest really is to restrict to really this understanding of fi sabilillah in the path of Allah, to really people partaking in the battlefield. And Ibn Sabil is someone, a wayfarer. Basically, this is someone who's traveling. He's maybe traveling in his homeland or another country. He's wealthy, but all of a sudden, because he's in another place, he doesn't have access to his wealth, and he literally has no money, and he's in need of money at that point. So though he's wealthy, but he's a traveler, and on that particular point, he has a need and he can't fulfill it because he doesn't have access to his money. So someone like that, you can help him to help that traveler with your zakah money as well. So that's broadly the recipients of zakah. Now, who can't receive zakah? So it is not permissible for one to give zakah to a dhimmi. So those non-Muslims who are living in a Muslim land under the protection and they're paying taxes. No, you can build a mosque with it. No, a dead person can be shrouded with it. No, it may be paid to a rich person. It can't be paid to the family of the Prophet ﷺ. So there is again some disagreement on that. They say that the four imams agree on this, that you can't pay it to the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Though they do say that because at that time, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to get a share from the booty of the wars. From the spoils of the war, there was a specific portion that used to go to the family of the Prophet ﷺ. And the four imams have said that it's not permissible to give them zakah money. However, they have been reported to have said that if that system doesn't exist anymore, where they receive the booties of the war or the spoils of the war, then they may be helped from the zakah funds. Okay, so really, though it's still now, there is still the understanding that you don't give to the Ahlul Bayt from the zakat funds, though there is actually some concession given in that, that if the system doesn't exist anymore where they used to receive, where they used to receive at the time of the Prophet ﷺ from the booty of the war, then they may be helped with zakat funds. So really, again, because of the disagreement and the kind of sensitivity around it, it's best if you need to help one of the family members of the Prophet ﷺ, then it's best if you can do a sadaqah, not zakat funds, just with other funds you have. It's best to do with that. Only the last resort, if you really don't have any other funds and you find a needy Ahlul Bayt, then you may help them with the zakat funds. That's only the last resort, that they're really needy and there are no other source of funds to help them. So one may do so in that case. And the rule here is about giving to your regarding your parents and your children and all that. The rule here, the general rule here is the giver of zakat can't benefit from it. Okay, you can't benefit from the zakat. What that means is if you're giving zakat, then there can be no implication that you will be benefiting from that. So generally the benefits between the children and the parents are shared. Okay, so you can't, so what a father owns, it's for the son. And what the son owns, it's for the parents and all that. So any relationships which are going downwards and upwards, like from the parents to the children, so parents can't give zakat to the children and children can't give zakat to the parents. Okay, likewise, you can't give it to all the way down to your grandchildren, doesn't matter what the number is, and likewise all the way up to your grandparents. So that relationship, they say, is a mutual benefit, a relationship of mutual benefit. You benefit from each other, therefore you can't give zakat to each other. And likewise, they say husband and wife, again, is a relationship where there's mutual benefit. You share the benefits. Okay, so again, husband and wife can't give zakat to each other either. So that's on that. Aware of time, running out of time. Okay, let me try to wrap up. So tamliq, transfer of ownership. So when giving zakat, one has to completely ensure that you give complete ownership to the person you're giving zakat. So, and the reason for that is the person you're giving zakat, he needs to have absolute authority in how he wishes to spend the money. As long as he's from the categories of the zakat we mentioned, the recipients, then really you need to do complete transfer of ownership to the person so that he can spend as he wishes. Now, we know that there are many zakat appeals, for food parcels, for medicines and all that. Is it permissible to do that? Because zakat should be given to the person, complete ownership. So if I give, other than cash, if I give like a food parcel or some medicine as zakat, is that permissible to do? The general rule is the preferred option is to give the poor person in cash. Okay, you give them in cash because they know well what their needs are, and let them make the decision on how they would like to spend their money. However, in the Hanafi school, it's permissible that if you are aware of their needs, that, for example, you walk into a war zone country and they don't have shelter, they don't have food and all that, and you're aware of their needs, then the Hanafi school says it's permissible that you can actually buy them food, or medicine and all that, and give them the value of that itself. So you don't have to give cash, you can actually give food parcels and all that, though it's not permissible according to other schools. The other schools say that you actually need to, there are actually opinions that you actually need to give them the cash, though it's permissible in the Hanafi school. So all these appeals you see for food parcels and medicine and all that, and people appealing for zakat, is permissible to do that as long as it's not done out of vain. Like whoever is actually taking those food parcels and all that, it's actually the need of the people. He's not just doing it to get reputation, I just want to do a charity and I just want to look good. I'm just going to take food parcels. So, how can I do that? You know what? I'll just collect the zakat money. I'll collect zakah money and then I'll get food parcel. Then I'll find then I'll find people and all that. It doesn't work that way. You know the people who have a need, and you know the need is food, or you know the need is medicine. Now you know there's a need. Now you can use the zakah funds and use the zakah funds to buy those things for them that they're needy of, and then you can provide them those items in that way as zakah. But the key is that it's a need of the poor people, not just anything. Okay, so does one in debt pay zakah? So there is a consideration of debts in the nisab when one checks the nisab. So for example, today, 1st of January, I want to check, do I need to pay zakah? Do I hit the nisab level? So when I'm checking at the beginning of the year, do I hit the nisab level? I'm going to check, do I have any debts? If I have any debts, okay, then I will do the same check at the end of the year. So I do the check at the beginning of the year to see if my nisab year has started. Then I will do a check at the end of the year when I'm about to pay the zakah. So when I'm doing the nisab check in the beginning of the year, do I have any debts? If I have any debts, then I will deduct them from the nisab. Okay, if that takes me into negative amount and into an amount which is lower than the nisab, I can't start my nisab year because I don't have sufficient funds to be obligated to even pay zakah, because maybe I had £5,000 in savings on 1st of Jan, but then I had a £3,000 debt. So when I minus that, I'm left with £1,000, for example. So it's below the nisab. So technically my nisab year can't begin. So I don't have nisab. So I can't start the year. The only time I can start the beginning of the year is when I'm above the threshold minus the debts. Okay. Once I've done the check in the beginning of the year, do I have the nisab? Okay. After doing the calculation, yes, you still have above nisab. Okay. You will start the year. When the whole year ends and you still have nisab equal or more than that, then say you at the end of the year. So say, for example, you didn't have any debt in the beginning of the year and you started your nisab year. Okay. Now, throughout the year, it's fluctuating, but it never goes down below. Then at the end of the year, you do the same check again. Do you still have any debt? Have you taken any debts on? And any point you take any debts on, that might take you down to negative. Yeah, below zero. Anytime you go below zero, your nisab year ends because of debts. Okay. However, if it doesn't go below zero, then that debt is not going to cease your nisab year. It will still continue. Like we said before, the only time your nisab year will cease is when you go below the nisab, when your wealth is completely destroyed, meaning you've gone below zero. Okay. If it doesn't go below zero, then any debt even will not cease your nisab year. So you did the check in the beginning of the year, then you'll do the check at the end. Do you still have any debt to pay on all that? And you will just minus them. Now, debts are divided into two types. So long-term loans. So any loan which is due after a year, this is a long-term loan. So if you made an arrangement with someone and he said, I'm okay, pay me in 5 years, we consider that to be a long-term debt. And there's an immediate loan. Any loan which is due within a year, we say that is an immediate loan. Now, when we do the zakat calculation, it is only the immediate loan that you can take out. Okay. So when you're doing the nisab calculation, if it's only an immediate loan, then that is the only loan that you can take out. So if your friend said, I'm lending you £10,000, okay, and you can pay me in 5 years, we say that is not considered at all. You can't deduct that debt from your nisab because it's a long-term loan. If you borrowed money from your friend, again, the same amount, 10K, and he said, you need to pay me within a year. We say now that is an immediate loan. It's payable within a year. Now you can deduct all of that. Okay. Now what happens with mortgages and stuff like that? So So with regard to mortgages or loans where you've agreed it's a long-term loan, like over 5 years or 10 years or 25 years. So can you not deduct anything? What the advice is that you can only deduct the next monthly installment. So if you've got a mortgage and you're doing your nisab now, so the only debt you can consider from the mortgage is your next monthly installment. So for example, if your mortgage is £800 a month and is payable over 25 years, that's a long-term loan. You can't deduct the entire, so if you took 50K mortgage out, you can't take the entire 50K and say, oh, I'm below nisab. No, you can't do that. You have to you can only take the next month's installment and deduct that from your nisab. If that still keeps you above nisab level, then you pay zakah. You qualify to pay zakah. And the worst case scenario is they say you can consider up to the entire year payments, monthly installments. But they say it's best only to take the immediate next month installment and only factor that into your nisab, not the entire mortgage or not even the 12 months, but you are allowed to take up to 12 months deductions. Okay, so you're allowed to take up to 12 monthly installments, which is up to a year, and deduct all of that from your nisab. And they say only do the full year if you think you're going to struggle in the year to pay it. If the impact on you is significant, then no, then yes, you may take up to a full year, but nothing more than a full year you can consider. And also consider any immediate expenses that you need to pay as well. For example, your year starts today, and you might have council tax bill to pay within 2 months. So any immediate expenses that within a year, consider all of them, take them all out. Okay, is zakah payable on money lent? So if you borrowed someone money, then yes, we say you have to. So if you lent out money to someone, to your friend, say it was 10K, and he's had it for 5 years, we say you have to pay zakah on that every year. Okay, so it's been with him for 5 years. Every year it's been with him. For every single year that the money has been with your friend that you lent out, there is zakah due upon you. You may not pay the zakah every year, but you may not pay it because you don't have access to the money, but you still are obliged to pay zakah on that money every year. And what we say is you don't have to pay, there's no requirement to pay it every year, but as soon as you receive the money back, then you will have to pay for every single year the zakah that was due on it while the money was lent out. And that's just a basic principle on this. How much time do we have?
If we can, I think once you've wrapped up, we'll give about 10 minutes for questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think I've probably got a few more slides, another 5-10 minutes, and I should be done.
Okay, inshallah.
Okay. Okay, zakah on stocks and trade assets. So if you have any trade assets, like you're buying and selling things, for example, you decided to buy and sell cars. Yeah, we say now that's become a trade commodity. You're buying and selling, you're engaging in trade, so they become zakatable. You have to. So when you're doing your so now I hope it's clear that once you've possessed the minimum zakat, which is the nisab for an entire year, then what do you pay zakat on? So you pay zakat on any cash savings you have, and those things don't have to be in your possession for a year. Okay, we just look at so today, say my year ended today, my year finishes today, I'm looking at I need to pay zakat now because I held the minimum zakat nisab for an entire year. So I'm going to look at, okay, what cash saving do I have today? It could be 10K, 15K, 20K. Okay, I've got 10K cash savings. Okay, do I have any trade commodities? am I engaged in business, for example? Am I buying and selling cars? So I'm going to have to value every single car I have now. Okay, I'm going to add them up. Then am I doing anything? Have I got any, did I buy any land that I bought with the intention of selling? Okay, I'm going to value that at the market value. The car as well, you have to base it on the market value, the sale price. Okay, so once you got all these things, all of these things you have now, you're going to have to sum them up and say it comes to 150K. Then you say, okay, I'm going to, now my zakah is 2.5% of the 2.5 of the 150K. Is zakah payable on pension schemes? So pension schemes are zakatable since they are money owned by you. Now, the only issue is when one owes the zakah. So the issue is, when do you pay the zakah? There's no doubt that it's a zakatable pension schemes because this is your money. So there are two things you can do. If you opt out of the pension scheme, then as soon as you receive the money, you'll pay zakah on it. And it'll be like any cash saving you have, okay? So that's one thing. So as soon as if you opt out today, say today I opted out of my pension scheme, I've got access to the money now, then I'll just pay zakah on it. But if you don't opt out, then zakah is not due immediately since you don't have access to that money, okay? It's not immediately due upon you to pay because you don't have access to that money. However, it is money owned, so it is zakatable. Okay, but you will not pay until you have access to the funds. So say it's been 5 years, you had a pension scheme now. So for every year, the money has been there. At the end of every year, whatever the market value of that share is, you will need to pay zakah on that. And you may not pay every year because you don't have the funds now, but as soon as you cash out the funds, maybe in 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years, for all those 30 years, you are due zakat. You will have to, so you have to really, every year end, you have to, if you're not paying it every year, then you have to make a note. Okay, this is the amount I had in my shares. This is the value. So this is the 2.5%. You make a note. Year 2, you do the same thing. And say after 30 years, you're retired and your pension kicks in, you're going to have to pay the zakah for those 30 years, for example. So it's best to actually pay your zakah every year as you go along. Otherwise, it'll become quite difficult to, after 30 years, trying to pay that zakah. It'll be huge. Okay, is zakah payable on share schemes? Again, it is obligatory to pay zakah on shares. There are some details. Now, if you purchase your shares for capital gain, meaning you're buying and selling them, then they're treated as trade commodities, just the way you are buying and selling cars. That's how they're seen. So if your purpose was to just get some, shares and, you're just looking at the right time and you sell them, then we say it's like you're buying a car. So they will be considered as trade commodities, and you will have to, at the time, when you're trying to do your zakah calculation for once the year lapses, then you will have to consider whatever the market value of that share is, and you'll pay zakah on that year. Or if you're not doing it for capital gain, but you are doing it for dividend, so that means you've actually invested in shares, and now you now you're a shareholder in the company. Okay, if that is the case, then we say zakah will be due. So if you're receiving dividends, then that's cash, every year you're receiving from the company profits, then yes, as soon as you receive that cash, then there will be dividends on that. But at the same time, now you're an owner, you're a co-owner in a business. You have shares in that business, meaning you're a co-owner in the business. Then just the way, if you have a grocery shop, for example, and in the shop you have trade commodities, you use fruit, vegetables, and you got stock in there. So as a shopkeeper, you will have to actually value your stock, and whatever the sale price is, not the cost price, you will have to actually give a value of your entire shop. And then you'll have to actually figure out, okay, what is the stock worth, the sale price. You will actually pay zakah on the stock. Likewise, now you become a shareholder in the company. What that means is any stock that business has, the business has to pay zakah on it. What that means is, because you're a shareholder now, you also have to pay zakah on it. So for example, if you bought shares of £100 in one company and you did it with the intention of receiving dividends, so you become a shareholder. Now, if that company has no assets which are zakatable, then there's no zakah on the company assets, okay? Because it's not a shop, maybe it's just like a IT consultancy company and they don't really have any assets. So, okay, you don't pay any zakah on that. But say if it was a business where, you know what, they have some things, it might be like a Tesco or something, for example, yeah? And you got shareholders, shares in that. So you will look at your share. So you invested £100 in shares. And you look at, for example, the company you invested in has got 50% of their assets as zakatable, meaning, you know, they would have to pay zakat on that. Then you would say, okay, 50% of the assets are zakatable and your share, you put £100 in. Then we say, since the 50% of the assets are zakatable, then the £100 you put in, 50% of that is zakatable. You'll have to pay zakat on the 50% of the £50 you put in. So it gets a bit complicated with all these businesses. Again, this is just a vague idea to give you that, you know, if you're becoming a shareholder, then there's a consideration that you may now need to pay zakah on the assets the company holds. So again, something to look into more detail. Real estate investment. Okay, there is no zakah on property acquired for personal ownership. Like we said, anything which is a personal belonging for personal use, we say there is no zakah on that. One would, however, include any money obtained from selling or renting out such property. On the other hand, property acquired with the specific intention to trade is subject to zakah. So if you bought a property or a land and your firm intention at that time was that I am going to buy this and sell this at a profit, that's the sole intention, then we say this is a trade commodity, and every year, you know, you're going to have to pay zakah on that, because your intention is to buy and sell in that. That's your firm intention. However, if you bought the property or the land not with the intention of buying and selling, but that was only a possibility. You bought it, you said, you know what, it's going at a good price, let me just buy it, and I'll think afterwards what I'll do with it. The only time you'll pay zakah on land or property is when, at the point of purchasing it, your firm intention was to, as soon as you buy it, you will sell it at a profit. Any other intention means that you don't have to pay zakah on it, as long as you hold that property or the land. However, if you later sell a property which you just bought for without any clear intention, any land, but then you sold it, then it becomes cash. Then guess what we do with cash? Cash is just saving. Then, you know, if the year comes, then you'll consider the cash and you'll calculate the zakah on that cash anyway. If you have a property and you're renting it out, if that's your intention, that you're going to rent out the property, not to sell it, then we say there's zakah on the cash, on the rental income that you receive. Again, that is rental income coming into you as cash. Then it's already cash. Then you've already considered that anyway when you're calculating your cash savings. I think that's the end of the slide. We're ready to, we can take any.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Ustadh Bilal. I believe you'll probably have access to the chat where the questions are. If you want to just go down as you're able to, just down those questions yourself, if that's okay.
That's fine. I can do that.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
So if you have cash in business account, do you pay on all amount or after subtracting the tax liability? For example, if you have loan in cash in business account to invest, do you pay zakat? Okay, so the first part of the question is, if you have any cash in business account, do you pay on all amount or after subtracting the tax liability? So like I said, if you're a limited company or something like that, and you have profits in the account sitting there, and your tax year is about to, and so you have a full tax year, and you will actually, which is why, again, one point to make is, for businesses, it's very essential, it's very important to sit with someone to understand your business model. And only once, you need to do it only once. You just sit down with someone who knows about the Zakah matters. You sit down with them once only. You explain your business model, how income comes, what's the Zakah, and what is your tax end year, because the tax end year could, it depends on when you started the company. So if you started the company on 1st of Feb, then your tax end year is 31st of Jan. Okay, so all these complications and all that. So it's always best to sit with someone to explain your situation, what your tax year end is, and everything. Then the person can advise you that this is the best way to consider your tax liabilities and all that. But in a brief, yes, what you will do is, if you have savings, cash, profits in your business account, then as we said, you will take out your expenses. So for example, if you got money from VAT that you need to pay, you'll take the VAT out, because that's due every quarter, for example. You'll take the VAT, that's an expense from the savings that are there. You'll also see that within the year, you have to pay your taxes for the corporation taxes, for example. You will also take them out. And then whatever is left is the amount that is zakatable. But it's always best to sort this out once in the beginning of your business. Then you know what you're doing every year. Then you won't be confused, because it's very easy if you don't have an agreed process of doing this. It's very easy that one year you might take the tax liabilities out, the other year you might not, and you might actually mix them up in different years, and it could become quite messy. So it's always best to sit down once with someone who knows and just sort the procedure out of how you're going to calculate your zakah every year in the business. If you have loan, and the second part was, if you have loan in cash in business account, so if you have loan in cash in business account to invest, do you pay zakat? So the same rule will apply. So like we mentioned, you only take the immediate loan out. So anything which is due to be paid within a year, you can take that as deduct that from your zakat liability. So if you have, for example, your saving in the business account is 20K, and you need to pay, and you took a loan on the business, for example, and your monthly installment is, say, 1,000K. Okay, 1K. So you could consider up to 12 months payments. You could take the 12K, minus that from 20K, you got left with 8K, so you'll pay zakah on the 8K. If both husband and wife own business together, do both pay separately? It doesn't make a difference, really. It depends how you want to do it. But zakah is obligatory on every adult. So yes, so the wife and the husband both are obligated to pay zakah. Now, how they do that, it's up to them, but each individual is obligated to pay zakah. So if in a business, do both pay? So it has in the bigger scheme, it doesn't make a difference, really. So as long as both reach the nisab level, then really, whether you do it collectively, because you're just going to add all your savings together and we're going to pay 2.5% on it. It works out to be the same whether you do it individually or you combine it together. It doesn't make a difference. However, it makes a difference if one has savings and the other doesn't have. And if the wife, for example, doesn't hit the nisab level. So we say she doesn't have to pay zakah. But if both hit the nisab level, then whether they do it together, combined, or individually, the end result is the same. But you want to, when the husband is checking his qualification to pay zakah, he isn't looking at the savings of his wife. So if the husband is poor and the wife is rich, then only the wife is paying the zakah. Okay, and the husband is poor, he doesn't pay zakah. So it has implications at that level when you're doing the check whether you need to pay zakah. But if both have to pay zakah, then really the end result is the same after paying zakah then. If someone have if someone have made the firm intention to do some major expense, for example, house extension, marriage, traveling, etc., then can he deduct that money from zakat nisab? Yes. So, for example, you're doing a check of nisab today, for example, and you're seeing if your year can start now. You check, you have, say, the zakat, the nisab of gold is 3.5K, for example, and you have, for example, 20K in the bank account. So for sure, at this point, you have nisab level. So one would say, yes, you'll have to pay zakah, and you have no expenses. For example, you have no loan, you have no mortgage, nothing to pay for. Okay, then in a normal circumstances, we will say that you're well above the nisab level, you'll have to pay zakah, as long as 1 year lapses on that amount and you hold at least 3.5K throughout the year. Okay, now when you did the check, you knew that I have 20K, but I will be spending on an operation or surgery, something, and the surgery is going to, and the date has been finalized. The doctors have said after 6 months from now, you'll be undergoing the surgery, and the cost is 25K. You can consider that. You'll take that out, then you'll say, okay, because something is certain, it's a certain expense, and the date has been agreed. Yes, you don't have to. You'll deduct that expense from it. And like we said, you can take up to a year's worth of payments. However, if that operation was going to happen after 18 months and you had a date, we say you can't consider that because that comes into a long-term loan. Likewise, same scenario, and you have 20K in the bank, and you're going to get married in 6 months' time, and you have a certain expense that you have to pay for the wedding hall, you have to pay for the food and everything. And if you take all the expenses, and that would take you into minus below the nisab, again a valid expense to deduct when you're doing the zakat assessment. Likewise, traveling, anything which is a valid, anything which is certain within a year, and it's a certain expense, then we say you can deduct that.
Thank you very much for that, Ustadh Bilal. I believe those are all the questions at this point in the chat that you've addressed. I will propose that we wrap the session up now, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, inshallah.
Thank you very much indeed. Just a word to the audience that this video will be uploaded to our Facebook page. So if you wish to go back and revisit the video, watch it again, then you will be able to do so. Please do keep an eye out on our Facebook page and our Twitter feed for future upcoming talks and seminars and courses that we, Three Men Foundation, are organising and putting on. You'll see all the details on there. And just a particular word for next Saturday onwards, a reminder that we will be